Okay, so let's start exploring the toolbar, and by that I just mean sort of this row of options that we have to format numbers and text. And in this video, we're really going to focus on formatting numbers. So I have just a list of 50 numbers just randomly generated in column A, and I want to format those. So one way that I could do that, I could select column A just by clicking on that letter A at the top, and I can come up here to format. And then I can select number, and then I have a lot of options before me. But all of those options are also available to me from this toolbar, from these little drop downs here. So, and these are sort of the most common ones that we'll use. So I really like to point people towards this area of the toolbar for the formatting. So if I select column A, and let's say that these numbers actually represented dollar amounts. So I was typing in the number of donations that I received at some sort of fundraiser. So I would actually format that as currency. So you see if I hover over this dollar sign, it sort of tells me what I'm doing here. And if I click that, it's just going to give me those dollars. And it's going to add those decimals because that's sort of the standard convention for formatting money. But if I didn't really care, I knew they were all dollar bills, I didn't want any cents involved, I could actually remove decimal places by this button here. So I could kind of bring those back and walk that back just to have the standard integer there. Or I could do the opposite and increase my decimal spaces with the button next to it. I'm going to Command Z though or Control Z to undo all of that though. And now let's say I wanted to format this column as a percent. So you can probably see this percent button here. I could click that, but that's 3,200%, which isn't necessarily a percent we see every day. So if I had intended this to be 32%, then what I really need to do is divide this number by 100. So I can just do that in column B here really easily. So I'm going to create a little function. So this is the first function we've talked about. They all start with the equal sign. So any formula will start with equal sign. And I want to divide whatever is in this cell. So I'm just going to click on cell A2 and I'm going to divide that. So I'm going to do just a / and I'm going to divide that by 100 for this case because these numbers are formatted pretty well to do that. And once I push enter, you can see that it formats that and it divides 32 by 100 to give me a decimal. Let's say I wanted to do that for all of these numbers. Well, we talked about the fill handle in another video. I could click and drag this fill handle down and it'll adjust my formula. If you look here up at the top left, that A2, as I go down, is going to adjust to A3 and A4 and so on. So it's referencing, what it's referencing in the A column is adjusting as I go down the sheet. So I can click and drag the fill handle like I did, or I can just double click. And if I double click that fill handle, you can see it's going to go all the way down and do what it can until it runs out of data. So now this column B, is much more well formatted for percentages. So if I wanted to format this as a percent, I could select the whole column, come up here to percent, and just push that button, and it's going to give me the percentage that represents. So now I don't have 3,200%, I have 32%. And again, I can walk those decimals back, or I can create more decimal places if I want. Since those all end in 0, I'm gonna decrease my decimal places and just go to the whole number there. Another thing I can do is format dates. So an interesting thing, let's just say I have these numbers, 0 through 5. We can format these as dates. So if I just select this range, so I have my cell C2 selected. If I hold down Shift and click on this 5, it's going to select all of those continuously. And I can format this as a date. So I can come up to format, or if I see this little drop down next to the numbers, it'll say more formats. And if I click on that, I can choose one of these date options. So I'm just going to choose this top one. And for some reason, I don't know the reason why, but the number 0 formats to this date. It formats to December 30th, 1899. And if I drag this down, the number 1 is New Year's Eve of 1899. And I don't know why Google Sheets and Excel have decided this, but the number 2 formats to New Year's Day in 1900. So standard numbers will actually format as dates. So if I formatted this whole column as dates, and sometimes you might see this, and the dates just seem wonky all over the place, that's really because it's counting the 54th day from this point, from day 0, which is December 30th, 1899. But again, that's not really useful. It's just sort of an interesting thing about Excel. So I'm going to do today's date. Let's do February 9th. And I'll just drag this down a little bit, or actually I'll double click that and fill all of that down. So I have a date here. It's already formatted in a pretty standard format, but let's say I want to change this up. Let's say I usually include the hours as well. So I didn't define that. I don't have like an actual time stamp or anything, but I could add the hours and minutes there if I wanted, or I can come down here to even more formats and say more date and time formats, and customize it however I want. So you see I have my options for month, day, year, hour, minute. So let's say I don't even want my minutes. And let's say I don't care about my seconds. I just care about the hour of the day for each month of a year. And I like to have that leading 0. So I can even drop down and say how I want my months formatted, or if I want the abbreviation or the full name, but I'll do that leading 0, and I'll do a leading 0 here as well. So it's MMDD and then 4 for, 4 Ys for the year there. But notice these colons are still there because it was trying to do the minutes and seconds. If I apply this, I'm going to have colons in my data. Even though there's nothing there, because that's how I formatted it. So I'll have to go back in there and do my more date and time formats and just delete those colons away. And I can delete those hours away too. Those were just for demonstration purposes. Those aren't really helpful. And if I apply that, now I have the date format however I want. Again, just really quickly, I'm going to go to more formats and then do more date and time formats. And now let's just change those to the abbreviation, and I'll remove that leading 0. And those same dates are now, formatted this way. So just a little quick overview of formatting numbers and percents and how to manipulate that a little bit. And again, we touched on the fill bar a little bit. Just double clicking on that fill handle, this little blue square in the bottom right-hand corner, we'll fill that down all the way that we need to till the end of our data. So hope that was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.